Hyun Park's eyes snapped open, his body instantly alert. Years of military training had conditioned him to wake at the slightest disturbance. The cabin was silent, but something felt wrong. Moonlight filtered through the dusty windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. He didn't move. Breathing slow and controlled, Hyun scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of place. The old leather chair by the fireplace, the bookshelf with its worn military manuals, the kitchen counter with unwashed coffee mugs, yet the air felt different, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. A soft movement caught his attention. In the far corner of the living room, a figure sat perfectly still. At first, Hyun thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow, becoming something more. But as his eyes adjusted, he realized it was very real. She wasn't human. Not entirely. Her skin seemed to shift between silver and pale blue, almost like living metal. Completely motionless, she watched him with eyes that were too large, too intelligent. They reflected the moonlight with an almost liquid intensity. No ordinary creature could remain so perfectly still. Hyun's hand inched slowly towards the hidden compartment under his coffee table. One smooth movement and he could reach the compact pistol he kept for emergencies. Military habit. Always have a backup plan. "I know what you're thinking," the woman spoke. Her voice was clear, precise, with no accent Hyun could identify. It wasn't Korean. It wasn't any human language he'd ever heard. Yet somehow he understood every word perfectly. "Who are you?" Hyun asked, his voice low and controlled. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, her gaze seemed to look through him, analyzing every muscle, every potential movement. Hyun felt exposed, like a specimen under a microscope. "My name is Rhea," she finally said, "and you're going to help me." It wasn't a request, it was a statement. Hyun's military training kicked into high gear. Threat assessment, potential weapons, escape routes. The cabin was remote, nearest neighbor was miles away. No immediate backup, no quick rescue. Rhea hadn't moved from her position. She wore something that wasn't clothing, more like a living suit that seemed to breathe and adjust with her smallest movement. Complex patterns shifted across its surface, like digital camouflage constantly recalibrating. "I don't take orders," Hyun responded, his hand now inches from the hidden compartment. A slight smile crossed Rhea's face. Not warm, not human. More like a calculation of potential outcomes. "You misunderstand," she said. "This isn't a request. This is survival, yours and mine." Something in her tone made Hyun pause. Not a threat. Something else. Urgency. Desperation, perhaps. But aliens weren't supposed to feel desperation. They were supposed to be cold. Calculated. The moonlight seemed to bend around her, creating strange shadows that didn't quite match her form. Hyun blinked, wondering if he was still asleep. Dream or reality? "What do you want?" he asked. Rhea leaned forward slightly. The movement was fluid, impossible. Like water taking human shape. "To prevent a war," she said, "before it even begins." Outside, something moved in the darkness. A sound, not quite a sound, more like a vibration that made the windows rattle, slightly. Hyun's military instincts screamed danger. Rhea's eyes changed, no longer observing, now hunting. "They're coming," she whispered. And just like that, Hyun Park knew his quiet life was over. Something much larger was about to begin. Would you like me to continue or modify this part of the story? The morning light filtered through the cabin's dusty windows, casting a soft glow on the strange device Rhea had placed on Hyun's wooden table. It looked like nothing he had ever seen before. Not quite metal, not quite liquid, something in between that seemed to breathe and pulse with its own internal rhythm. "This is our problem," Rhea said, her fingers moving across the surface of the device. Each touch created ripples of light that danced like electric veins. Hyun watched carefully. Military training had taught him to observe, to wait, to understand before acting. The device looked fragile, but something told him it was more dangerous than any weapon he'd encountered. The collective is tracking me, Ria continued. Her voice was matter-of-fact without fear. They will destroy everything to find me. Outside, the mountain forest stood silent. Pine trees swayed gently, hiding secrets between their dark branches. Hyun knew this place. He had chosen this location precisely because it was isolated. No neighbors, no unexpected visitors. Until now, Ria's fingers continued their dance across the device. Suddenly it made a sound. Not quite a beep, more like a musical whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "What are you?" Hyun asked. The question hung in the air between them. She looked up. Her eyes were different now, sharper, more focused. "I'm a messenger, and you're going to help me stop an invasion." Hyun laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "Invasion? Me? I'm just a retired communications engineer living in the mountains." "Exactly why you're perfect," Ria responded. The device on the table suddenly projected a holographic map. It wasn't like any map Hyun had seen before. Continents shifted. Boundaries moved. Strange symbols pulsed with different colors, red, blue, green, each representing something he couldn't understand. "The collective sees your planet as a resource," Ria explained. "Not as a civilization, as a potential farm, a place to harvest biological material." Her words were clinical, cold, but Hyun saw something else in her eyes. Something that looked like respect? Concern? "Why me?" he asked. Ria's hand moved across the holographic map. Locations began to highlight. Communication stations, military bases, technological centers. "Because you understand systems, how they connect, how they can be broken." The device suddenly made a sharp sound. A warning. Ria's body went completely still. Her skin seemed to shift, becoming more metallic, more alert. "They're closer than I thought," she whispered. Hyun felt something he hadn't felt in years. Excitement. Danger. The old military instincts were returning. The part of him that had loved solving complex communication puzzles. The part that had been sleeping, waiting. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Ria's smile was not human. It was a calculation. A strategy. "We need to disappear," she said, "and then we need to fight back." Outside, something moved between the trees. A shadow. A vibration. Something that didn't belong in this quiet mountain landscape. The device on the table continued to pulse. Alive. Waiting. Hyun Park realized his life would never be the same. The quiet retirement he had planned was over. Something much bigger was about to begin, and for the first time in years, he was ready. Would you like me to continue or modify this part of the story? The cabin's wooden walls seemed to absorb the tension between Hyun and Ria. Outside, the mountain wind whispered secrets through pine trees, but inside, a different conversation was unfolding. "Humans are more dangerous than you realize," Ria said, spreading out a holographic map that flickered between solid and transparent. Her fingers traced invisible lines connecting different points across the globe. Hyun watched carefully. Years of military communications training had taught him to read between the lines, to understand what wasn't being said directly. "The collective doesn't see humans as a threat," she continued. "They see a potential resource. Biological material, genetic testing, labor force." A small device on the table began to pulse. Blue lights danced across its surface, creating complex patterns that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. Hyun recognized something in those patterns. Not just technology, but something more. A language. A warning. "Why me?" Hyun asked. His voice was calm, controlled. The question of a trained professional, not a scared civilian. Ria's eyes shifted. For a moment they looked almost human, almost vulnerable. "Because you understand systems, communication networks, how information flows." The holographic map expanded. Cities appeared. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London. Red lines began connecting them, pulsing with an urgent rhythm. Each line represented something more than a simple connection, a potential weakness, a potential strength. Your species adapts, Rhea explained. Where other civilizations would break, humans modify, change, survive. A distant sound interrupted them, something mechanical, something that didn't belong in the quiet mountain landscape. Rhea's body went completely still. Her skin seemed to shift, becoming more metallic, more alert. "They're getting closer," she whispered. Hyun moved to the window. Nothing looked different. The forest remained peaceful, but he trusted Rhea's warning. Military instinct told him something was coming. "The collective believes in absolute control," Rhea continued. "They've conquered thousands of civilizations, turned planets into controlled systems, removed individual thought." The device on the table made a sharp sound. A warning. Locations began to highlight. Communication stations, military bases, technological centers. Each point represented a potential battleground. "Why are you helping us?" Hyun asked. Rhea's smile was not human, calculated, strategic. "Because some systems are meant to be broken." Outside, something moved between the trees. A shadow, a vibration, something that didn't belong in this quiet landscape. Hyun realized his quiet retirement was over. Something much larger was about to begin. The comfortable life he had planned was disappearing, replaced by a mission he didn't yet fully understand. "What do we do?" he asked. Rhea's hand touched the holographic device. The map changed. Potential invasion routes appeared. Weak points, strategic locations. "We make them understand that humans are not just another conquest." The cabin felt different. Now, no longer a quiet mountain retreat. Now a potential command center, a place where a strange alliance would plan something extraordinary. "They will come," Rhea said. "And when they do, they will discover something they never expected." Hyun looked at her. For the first time, he saw not just an alien, but a potential ally. A partner in a war nobody knew was coming. The wind outside grew stronger. The pine trees swayed. Something was coming, and they would be ready. "Would you like me to continue or modify this part of the story?" The cabin transformed. What was once a quiet mountain retreat became a training ground unlike any military facility Hyun had ever seen. Strange devices covered the walls, pulsing with blue and silver light. Maps shifted constantly, showing potential invasion routes that seemed to breathe and change. Rhea moved like liquid metal, her body demonstrating techniques that defied human understanding. "Observation is your first weapon," she told Hyun. Her movements were precise, calculated. Each gesture contained a lesson. Hyun watched carefully. His military background had prepared him for intense training. But this was different. These were not standard combat techniques. These were survival strategies from another world. "Humans have an advantage," Rhea explained, touching a device that created holographic projections around them. "You adapt. Most species in the galaxy have rigid systems. You break rules." The training was brutal. Hyun learned to mask electronic signatures, to turn everyday objects into potential weapons. A simple radio became a communication disruptor. A kitchen knife transformed into something that could cut through alien technology. Days blended into weeks. The mountain cabin became a fortress of hidden knowledge. Rhea pushed Hyun beyond his physical and mental limits. She showed him how to read energy patterns, how to detect tracking signals before they became threats. "The collective expects obedience," she would say during their intense training sessions. "Humans are built to challenge expectations." Outside, the forest remained quiet. But something had changed. The environment around the cabin seemed different. More alert, more aware. Hyun's body changed, muscles became lean and responsive. His mind learned to process information faster, to see patterns where others saw chaos. Rhea's training was more than physical. It was a complete transformation. "Your technology is primitive," Rhea told him one morning, "but your potential is unlimited." She showed him how to modify standard electronics. A smartphone became a complex scanning device. A laptop transformed into a communication interceptor. Each device gained capabilities far beyond its original design. The devices in the cabin seemed to come alive. They pulsed with an intelligence that was neither human nor completely alien. Something in between. A new kind of technology. Hyun learned to think differently, not just as a soldier, but as a potential defender of an entire planet. Each lesson from Rhea was a piece of a larger puzzle. They will come expecting weakness, Rhea explained during one training session. Her body moved through complex defensive patterns. We will show them strength. The holographic maps continued to change. Potential invasion routes, weak points in alien technology, strategic locations that could be turned into unexpected battlegrounds. Hyun's military background combined with Rhea's alien knowledge created something new. A hybrid strategy that defied traditional understanding of warfare. Humans survive, Rhea would repeat. Where others would break, you adapt. The cabin became more than a training ground. It became a beacon of potential resistance, a place where an impossible alliance was being formed. As weeks passed, Hyun realized he was no longer just a retired communications engineer. He was becoming something else, a potential defender of an entire planet. The devices around them continued to pulse, waiting, preparing. Something was coming, and they would be ready. The forest outside remained silent, but something had changed. The quiet mountain landscape was no longer just a landscape. It was a battlefield waiting to be defined. Would you like me to continue or modify this part of the story? The sky changed first. Not dramatically, but in a way that made experienced observers uncomfortable. Something metallic shifted between clouds, barely visible but definitely present. Hyun knew they were coming. Rhea stood perfectly still, her body now more machine than organic, scanning the atmosphere with impossible precision. First wave will be reconnaissance, she whispered. Her fingers touched a device that looked like liquid mercury. They always send scouts, always underestimate the target. Military satellites across the globe began to malfunction. Communication networks flickered. For most of the world, nothing seemed wrong. But Hyun and Rhea knew better. The first alien ship appeared over the Pacific Ocean. Silent, massive, unlike any human technology. Its surface seemed to breathe, shifting between solid and liquid states. To anyone watching, it would look like a strange cloud formation, but Hyun and Rhea saw the truth. Now, Rhea said, their preparation became action. The devices in the cabin, modified from everyday electronics, began to pulse. Each one a weapon, each one designed to disrupt, to confuse, to fight back. The alien ship's systems started to malfunction, not dramatically, subtly, like a disease, spreading through its technological body. Hyun's modified communication equipment sent signals that looked like normal background noise, but each signal was a weapon, each transmission a potential attack. They think we're primitive, Rhea explained, her fingers dancing across multiple screens. They don't understand adaptation. More ships appeared. 3, then 5, then 10, a formation designed to overwhelm, to crush resistance before it could begin. But they didn't know about Hyun. They didn't know about Rhea. The first ship began to fall, not explosively, quietly. Its system simply stopped working. Millions of complex technological connections suddenly going dark. Humans watching would see nothing unusual, just another strange occurrence in a world full of unexplained events. But this was different. They're scanning for weaknesses, Hyun said. His voice was calm, calculated, the voice of someone who had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Rhea's smile was not human. We have no weaknesses. Another ship fell, then another. Not destroyed, disabled, turned into massive floating technology. Graveyards. The collective's invasion plan depended on swift, overwhelming force. They had conquered thousands of civilizations, turned planets into controlled systems, removed individual thought. They did not understand humans. Hyun's modified equipment continued its silent attack. Each device a tiny weapon. Each transmission a potential kill switch. Humans survive, Rhea repeated. The words were both a statement and a weapon. The sky continued to change. Ships appeared. Ships disappeared. A dance of technology that most of the world would never understand. By the time global military organizations realized something was happening, the first wave was already defeated. Not through massive explosions, through something more dangerous. Complete, systematic failure. Hyun looked at Rhea. No words were needed. The real war was just beginning. Outside, the mountain forest remained quiet. Pine trees swayed in the wind. Nothing suggested the technological battle that had just occurred. But everything had changed. The collective had made a mistake. They had underestimated humans. They had underestimated Hyun and Rhea, and that mistake would cost them everything. The first contact was over. The first battle was won. But the war was just beginning. Would you like me to continue or modify this part of the story?